How's it going, everyone? It's Bobby from Northwestern 5000 here. Today is August 20th, 2018. So, as of right now, we have really nothing to look at in the Atlantic. So, obviously, our main focus in this video is going to be Hurricane Lane, which is basically roaming around the eastern Pacific right now, moving towards the west, starting to take more of a northwestern turn as we speak. And it is currently a 125 mile per hour storm, which is a much higher wind total than most meteorologists, including me. Well, I don't claim to be a meteorologist, but I'm getting there. But I expected this to weaken due to the high amount of dry air that was ahead of it as of yesterday. But it seemed like the dry air just wasn't enough to weaken this storm. And really, the only thing that weakened this storm from being a Category 4 hurricane to a 120 Category 3 hurricane was basically its eyewall replacement cycle. It really had nothing to do with the dry air that was surrounding this storm. But we still do have small amounts of dry air, but I think it's going to be very minuscule, that dry air, minuscule enough to a point where it won't even weaken it. But most forecast models, computer models are definitely expecting this to weaken for sure by the time it reaches Hawaii, because you see this small wind shear, basically this wind shear that's basically a small low pressure system that's just more towards the western Pacific, or I should say the easternmost latter part of the Pacific technically, because the line of longitude basically separates west to east. But anyways, the point is that there's a low pressure system and also a couple of weaknesses in the ridges of high pressure due to this low pressure system. And due to that, we're going to see an enhanced amount of wind shear as Hurricane Lane takes a march towards the northwest, and it should definitely weaken it by the time it reaches the island. So even though Hawaii may be a little scared right now because it's basically nearly a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 125 miles per hour, not too far southwest, and expected to take a northwest turn, the good news is that it's expected to weaken significantly by the time it reaches the Hawaii Islands, or at least by the time it gets close to the Hawaii Islands. So without further ado, let me show you the current track of Hurricane Lane by the National Weather Service. You can see that it's taking a much more dramatic northwest turn than originally expected. Even as recent as 2 days ago, it was expected to just stay south of Hawaii, not really doing much of anything besides rip currents and beach erosion and stuff like that. But it seems to be taking a more dramatic northwestern turn, which is definitely more of a worry for the islands of Hawaii, especially the most northwestern islands of Hawaii. As you can see, there's Hurricane Lane, just a couple hundred miles southwest of the biggest island of Hawaii, and it has the potential to bring potentially tropical storm force winds to some of these islands. So the good news is that it's expected to gradually weaken. By the time it's Thursday night, it should already be only a 110 or possibly a Category 2 or Category 1 hurricane by that time. And then it should significantly weaken by Friday once it gets more involved with the wind shear that's basically just over Hawaii, down to maybe barely a Cat 1, and then a tropical storm by Saturday. But keep in mind, people, that it's already proven by this hurricane that the projected strength of a hurricane is very difficult to forecast. The projected path will continue to get better and better, and it's definitely getting more reliable, but I think projected strength is still a very difficult thing to forecast over the next several days. It wasn't, the projected strength of hurricanes wasn't really basically very reliable until only about 10 years ago. Like before, you would see news stations just show the projected path of a hurricane, but now, as of 10 years ago, they've been showing the projected strength of a hurricane as obviously as time goes on. Weather forecasts become more accurate, and it became accurate enough where we can barely just reliably predict the projected strength of a hurricane, but it's still definitely far from accurate. A lot of these projected forecasts. So it was already proven, but at this point, based off of the predictions, Hurricane Lane should really be probably a Category 2 hurricane. But obviously, Hurricane Lane blew expectations. It's a 125 miles per hour hurricane, it proved that the dry air just wasn't enough to weaken Hurricane Lane. And you might be asking, why did the forecast suddenly change from mainly a western track of the storm to more of a northwestern track? And I'm gonna show you why right now based off of the computer models. So you could see right there where I'm identifying, there's Hurricane Lane, very small, and I'm using the 500 millibar geopotential height and anomaly. Credits to Tropical Tidbits for that, but you could see that Hurricane Lane is just in this small area where the geopotential height is very low, because it's gonna be very cold where the clouds are, obviously. So the blue basically represents the lower pressures in the summer, and you could see that there's Lane right there. And I'm gonna backtrack a little bit to where Lane was taking more western track for you to better understand it. So here's Hurricane Lane taking mostly a western track. You could see that just north of it, you see the red and oranges, which represents a higher air pressure. And what hurricanes usually do is they basically ride along a high pressure system, because basically the winds of the high pressure are basically spiraling into the hurricane, and it wants to get the higher pressure wants to get as close to lower pressure as possible, so it could release that wind energy from the higher pressure to lower pressure. So this is basically Hurricane Lane just riding along a higher pressure system that's trying to fill into the lower pressure of Hurricane Lane. But obviously Hurricane Lane is strengthening as a result of that. But as you could see, as we move forward and forward and forward, you could see just north of it, that high pressure just went far more north than it originally was just 2 days ago. And that basically gives Hurricane Lane an open lane, I should say, towards Hawaii, because the high pressure, there's no real high pressure really blocking Hurricane Lane to stay away from Hawaii, and it has basically a free lane to the north with an even lower pressure just north of it, which is gonna obviously attract Hurricane Lane, as low pressures are basically also attracted to each other. So Hurricane Lane basically has an open lane where there's no high pressure protecting Hawaii, which may make a potential landfall in the biggest island of Hawaii, which is the GFS, which is what the GFS is stating. So this is very interesting to look at, and the reason why the high pressure moves so north is due to the higher pressure basically filling in this extratropical cyclone just that's centered around Alaska. It weakens, and then the high pressure fills in for that low pressure that weakens or combines with another extratropical low, and that basically forces a higher pressure up north to focus on that high pressure instead of Hurricane Lane. So that is the reason why the hurricane, if this extratropical storm that I'm gonna go back to show you right now, if it was still a strong extratropical cyclone and it still was going till Thursday, Friday, then Hurricane Lane most likely wouldn't have taken the track to the northwest, since the high pressures would have stayed near Hurricane Lane, because it's not doing a successful job filling in for this low pressure. But since that low pressure weakens and the high pressure fills in, it basically takes away that opportunity. But anyways, guys, keep and watch Hawaii because this may be a tough forecast. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Local on the 8s videos coming up next, and